So we're going to explore the sacred feminine from the wounded feminine all the way through to the dark feminine and inner power. I'm speaking with Lua Valentia, an author and the founder of Specula. I'm Angel Miller, author of The Three Stages of Initiatic Spirituality and The Path of the Warrior Mystic, among other books.
Hello, hello. I'm so happy to be here today. So, what Angel and I are going to do is create some bridges and bring some perspectives in regard to the sacred divine feminine and the sacred divine masculine. Today, I'd like to start with the wounded feminine. Unfortunately, right now, we see lots of gender wars, and we can't discuss what is the role of the feminine and the role of the masculine without sounding like getting a package from a team, an ideology team. So I'd like for us to break these rules a little bit and truly be honest with each other and just give our perspectives, of course. And there are some signs of the wounded feminine. The first sign is when a woman sees femininity as a weakness. So everything that is related to feminine, what we call lazy girl jobs. I don't know why this is even a trend. I don't see any job as lazy, but whatever. Or flowers or pink or any of these qualities that are feminine, the woman sees it as a weakness. We also see that with certain men as well that couldn't even, I don't know, play with their daughters without feeling emasculated. But the problem is even more when it's a woman rejecting anything that is considered femininity, even in the etiquette scene. I'll give you one example. I don't work in the etiquette field, but I'm certified on it. And for instance, when you're sitting at a table, when the waitress presents the couple the wine, they're going to present the man the wine. And this is not sexist. Actually, if it is sexist, it's to women's favor, because the man should be able to recognize if the wine is spoiled or if there is something wrong with the wine. That's why the man drinks the wine first. Some women, especially in Brazil, they saw this as an attack because they thought the men were getting more wine, and it's not true. So there are many things like that. For instance, if a man is chivalrous, nowadays some women consider this some sort of sexism or attack because they see femininity and being soft of less
Inferior.
value.
Yeah. Well, I don't know if this is entirely relevant, but actually, a couple of days ago, I was thinking about beauty and what is beauty, which we associate with the feminine, right? Although, of course, there's masculine beauty as well, but okay, we associate it with feminine. And I think in this day and age, we think that beauty is something that's sort of decorative and frivolous and not necessary. Um, but I think there's another way of looking at that, and that is that beauty is a defense against ugliness, and not just ugliness physically, but also ugliness in one's soul, right? One's personality. And there's a relationship between beauty in the exterior world and beauty in oneself, right? So, if you go to, I don't know, you go to a palace and there's, the king and all of whatever it may be, the princes, whatever, then there's much, much more etiquette. It's much, much more beauty and opulence and paintings that were painted 500 years ago, 1,000 years ago, whatever it might be. But there's also a much more emphasis on decorum, right? What you must say, where you must stand, how you must have your feet positioned. Everything is going to be much more about decorum. And yeah, so I think, yeah, so bringing it back to the feminine. Um, yeah, feminine, male and female is different. But there is a power in beauty, and there is a power in the feminine, and yeah, we don't live in 500 years ago or 1,000 years ago. So yes, a woman can adopt masculine things, and a man can adopt feminine things or whatever. But it would seem that for most people, it might be wiser to accentuate the natural qualities, right? So men typically are taller and stronger and have, more bone density than women, for example. This is just on average, this is the case, right? If we were in a group of men and women, it would be a very rare thing to find that the women are taller than the men, right? It would be something that we would comment on. There just are physical differences, and those physical differences have been maybe not exaggerated, but have been enhanced, let's say, through culture. So women are petite and not typically as strong as men. So we prefer women who are more petite, and we don't value physical strength in women. We prefer women who are, you know, uh, uh, less muscular, let's say. We prefer men that are more muscular typically. I know things are changing, but that is the case. And yeah, and then, of course, again, one can adopt different things, male drag queens that you might see at a nightclub in New York have a certain power about them because they're outrageous and they say things that maybe they wouldn't even say if they weren't in drag. But yeah, obviously there's a power in a man who is masculine, and there's a power in a woman who is feminine, and I don't judge people however they want to live. That's perfectly fine. But it would seem to me to just totally reject that out of hand is maybe cutting off a lot of your social weapons. And, we don't have to use it cynically. And, maybe I should just say, I wrote a book, The Path of the Warrior Mystic, being a man in an age of chaos, but, which is, very masculine in a way. But, I also studied fashion. I used to stay in a monastery every year. And, so I don't believe in cliches, but I also don't believe in, to use an English expression, cutting off your nose to spite your face.
Yes, definitely. And it's a book, as you said, very masculine, but I loved reading it.
Right.
And
And
I
it's
think
all, yeah, and certainly, I think probably 98, 99% of it still applies to women. It's just maybe in a different proportion. So,
yes, definitely. I thought so too, especially the discipline part of
right.
it.
Yeah. Yeah.
And talking about that, the feminine that is wounded is very disconnected from the soft, the emotional flow. The emotional flow is very associated with the cycles, with what is it to be a woman. And with that, I must mention Persephone and the cycles and the feminine cycles associated with the seasons, for instance. Because we are different beings, we have different biologies, even. As you said, people should live as they want to live, and every walks of life are welcome in this channel. But we also need to recognize our biological differences. And what I notice is for the woman who has to be always a warrior, a woman who has to be always strong and fend for herself and being at war against anyone and everybody, she is wounded because she can't surrender. She cannot be vulnerable. Trying to be more masculine and invulnerable only depletes the woman if she's not connected to her cycle, if she doesn't know when to slow down or when to accelerate. She only drains herself or let herself to be drained or falls to the traps, many traps of modernity. And one example of this is the feminism that thinks it is empowering women by pushing the agenda that is good and that she's gonna be rich if she produces adult content or if she sells her body or something like that. So we have competitions of women sleeping with as many people as possible, and this kind of content is pushed to you unless if you specifically go to your social media and block certain words and block certain content and go to the effort of not seeing certain news, even in news, is normalized. And of course, there is a part of feminism that is against it, but another part that thinks it's empowering. And I think it's one of the traps. So let's talk about the dark femininity. And when we talk about that, we are talking about goddesses such as Persephone, who has both a dark and light femininity, Kali, Hecate, and Lilith, and many others. What we see in this archetype, the first thing is authenticity, which is rare because the dark feminine, she's not trying to conform. She's herself. She's gonna be her authentic self. But at the same time, she's not afraid of being feminine.
Yes, that's pretty interesting about goddesses. And, if you read a lot of mythology as well, what you also find is that, there's often this sort of male-female couple, and the male is a warrior, and the female is an enchantress or sorceress, or she knows the mysteries that he doesn't, and kind of guides him. Almost, in some cases, almost like he's a kind of puppet of fate, and she's directing the fate. Yeah, so there is this very definite dimension, and probably, the best known example is of, Sigurd the Dragon Slayer, who meets this Valkyrie, this sort of mystical, supernatural woman on a mountaintop, and she teaches him the runes and teaches him magic, which is, in a sense, it's maybe not what he's meant to know as a man, but she gives him this supernatural power which she possesses.
It's very dark femininity because
Yes.
whilst the light feminine nurtures and the dark feminine initiates and gives him enough knowledge to go through whatever he needs to go through.
There are different myths, right? But there, yeah, that may be true. But there, in the Sigurd the Dragon Slayer myth, he does slay the dragon and then make his
Of
way to
course.
this mountain. And I think again, part of that myth is that he has proved himself to be above other men. He's the one who could slay the dragon, and she is above other women. She's one of the daughters of Odin. This god of wisdom and magic and battle and the wild hunt and all kinds of things. And so they're both at this sort of very elevated level, but she is the one who possesses this supernatural power, this ability to enchant and change the world through magic or through the mind or whatever it may be.
Another characteristic is the fearlessness. Perhaps even if she is feeling fear, she's gonna do whatever she needs to do in order to achieve her goal. She's connected to her dark side and she's not afraid of the dark, of being in the dark, of learning the mysteries. We see in Inanna when Inanna descends to the underworld and she has to take her crown, everything, she needs to be naked to face death and to be
Hmm.
in the underworld. And the point is, we're gonna descend, we're gonna do this, and even in fear, we're gonna make it until the end, no matter what. So it is
Yeah.
another thing I love. And nowadays, I think many people, they just want to hide behind the mask or this facade and not face the darkest side. But if you really want to achieve your inner power, if you really want to understand who you are, there is no way of doing so without embracing your shadow.
Well, you kind of remind me when you say the dark side that in Norse mythology that there is an underworld that's freezing called Hell, Hel, and the goddess is also who lives there and rules that realm is also called Hell, and she's half black and half white. So it's almost like she has this light side, but she is also fully conscious of this dark side, and this which is the realm that she rules, the shadow self.
The dark feminine, she understands her power and she doesn't waste time and energy controlling what other people do around her. She will control herself, she will discipline herself. She's not gonna mother the man she is with, because there are many women out there that they want to control or mother their men.
Yeah, well, I think it comes back to what you were saying earlier, right? That yeah, I mean, it is absolutely true that in relationships, one person often try, or at least sometimes tries to control the other in all kinds of ways. You know, maybe buying cakes for their partner all the time so that they get a little bit fat and aren't quite as attractive. While at the same time giving them something that they actually enjoy. But there's also a controlling element. But yeah, I think it is what you, in a sense, are saying, and that is we have to develop this power in ourselves that we kind of that attracts the other person instead of always going after them. When we are engaged in something that we love, we sort of radiate this, something that's attractive to other people, this charisma, right? And always running after someone, whether it's a woman or a man, is generally a bad idea. And I'm sure almost everyone has had the experience that I've had the experience a long time ago of, having an attractive woman be interested in me. And initially, I'm interested in her, but she keeps running after me too much. And it starts to get annoying, but also kind of smothering. And I've definitely seen this with female friends do this as well. An attractive female friend, she has a guy she likes, and she's constantly texting him and running after him. And it looks like she has nothing in herself. And, it is probably true that women expect men to have something more in themselves than we expect women. But nevertheless, we don't want, women still shouldn't be chasing after men all the time. You want to sort of radiate some sort of charisma that you have a life, that you have a real character, a real personality, that you're actually someone that is worth, going back to.
Definitely. And I say this all the time. Be busy with yourself. Why? Why are you thinking too much about someone? Why are you getting angry if they don't reply? I try a lot to tell my clients about it, even doing too many love spells. Because all of this is also energy, right?
Of course, yeah.
If you're trying too much, if you're doing too much, you're not allowing a man to be himself. You're not giving him space in order for him to want to be with you.
Y yes, and I think the other aspect is that if, regardless of who's doing the chasing all the time, if you're doing nothing but chasing, you're kind of signaling that the other person is just so much better than you and out of your league. And we in relationships we want to be more or less equal, right? Which doesn't mean the same, but we want to be equal. Uh, or at least we want to respect the other person. And I think men in particular, a lot of women say, oh, well, men just want, a woman to respect them. And that is true, but I think that's half the story. I think the other half is, we want a woman we respect to respect us. It's like, if you're a woman, you go back home with a guy after you meet him for a couple of hours at a nightclub, maybe it'll work out, or maybe, if he doesn't respect himself, he's not going to respect you because he's just going to think, oh, well, I kind of pulled the wool over her eyes. I'm not really this great guy that I made myself out to be. I told her I run this $1 million business. It's not really that, my car's rented. I can barely pay for it, whatever it might be. He's going to feel like, I tricked her, I deceived her. I'm not, so I don't respect her. Whereas, if a woman says, you know, maybe don't put it like this, but it gives the impression that, well, okay, I think you've got some potential, but you need to prove to me that you're worth it. Not in a mean way, obviously, but just like I'm not going to be doing this with you until I'm completely satisfied with you. You prove to me that you are who you say you are over a couple of months or whatever, and then we'll take it forward. But yeah, so I think. Yeah, that is the thing, really. You need to have something in yourself and not be chasing because you'll just be chasing people away.
That's very true. But I do think chasing is more of a man's job.
Well, it is, yeah. I mean, whether we like that
That
or
is
not, yeah. And speaking of sexism, of course, every guy would love if attractive women came up to them and said, "Let me buy you a drink and take you back." Of course, they would love that, right? But yes, and people
that
will
we
say,
call them the princesses.
"Is that right?"
Yeah, yes.
Yeah, well, and people talk about Western culture a lot, but it's basically this way across the globe in every single culture. Maybe there's a tribe somewhere that doesn't do that, but certainly in every civilization is the man that is expected to prove himself and make the moves, right? So and to pursue the woman. It's not the other way around. In Islamic society, it's that way. In Chinese society, it's like that in every single civilization. So there's probably a reason for that, whether we like it or not. But yes, men are expected to pursue, but even then, not men are expected to pursue again intelligently, right? Not texting someone 10 times a day, but let me take you
Bombarding
out.
it.
Yeah, let me take you out to this place that you haven't seen before or whatever it is. Not, hey, what you doing? It's 10:30. I texted you 30 minutes ago. Not like that. That's kind of
Yes.
creepy.
Yes, it is. And also there is the dynamic of the anxious versus um avoiding people, which
Right.
definitely should people should work on their attachments. I know that, but usually you're absolutely right. If you identify someone's needs a little bit more space, just give a little bit more space. It doesn't mean to allow them to disappear, but definitely to allow some sort of balance. And the person who wants to disappear also needs to to work on these attachment styles, you know. Usually, though, is the man who is more avoidant and the woman who is more anxious. And there are some biological factors into that, the mood swings and the necessity of reassurance that we see more in females statistically, more in
Mhm.
females than in men. It
Right.
has to be, it has to do with the biological vulnerability of a woman.
Hmm.
And I know nowadays we can't talk about this, but it is true. It is true because you see, I've seen people who got pregnant in a risk pregnancy, and they still had to be, you know, the breadwinner, and they still had to provide for their family. So there is a risk there when a woman is in a relationship, the pregnancy risk,
Yeah. Yeah.
the and all of that is tied to her body, of course. So she should be highly selective. She should choose someone who could, in the case that she cannot work because of this, for instance, because she has a small child or something,
Hmm.
someone who could take care of her, of course. But nowadays, this, which is obvious to me, this became a taboo. And even talking about this and talking about that, yes, we are different. Yes, our timelines are completely different. If a woman wants a family, the chances of her getting pregnant uh, decreases according to her age. Of course, the male, of course, age also interferes with the quality of the pregnancy, whatever,
Hmm.
but there is no comparison. So we should be aware of this and move accordingly and not be afraid of saying these things because it became a taboo. And the reason why it became a taboo is because for a while there, it was more important for society that women produced a profit than producing children. And now we're realizing that the countries are getting older and older, and women should produce more children. There should be some sort of incentive for the population's growth or at least the maintenance of the population. So now people are running out of time to discover a solution after decades of trying to convince women that they should focus on profit rather than family. And it's not, I'm not even talking about independence. I'm not even talking about education. I'm talking about focusing on profit over family. The independence part, the education part is another story.
Yeah, so well, you're definitely right, and it's obviously it's not just women that have been, in a sense, commoditized by modern society. Obviously, it is men, but as well. But yes, of course, the reason why certain things are pushed is because it's good for our society. Having lots and lots of single women working is great. It's going to lower wages for a start because there's going to be more competition, and we will need to buy two of everything. So it's absolutely fantastic for capitalism. And, if you really wanted to be an anti-capitalist, you'd probably go back to, a model of three generations of family living in a single house, because not just because they only need one of everything, but because then the grandmother is going to say, don't you waste your money on whatever it is, a new car. Your uncle will fix that car for you. So it's terrible for capitalism. But that, as we've become more morally and politically, quote unquote, anti-capitalist, we've gone more and more in a capitalist direction with the anti-capitalists. So it's kind of interesting. We could have an anti-capitalist society. We just need to go back to families living in three generations in a house, which is not impossible, but we don't want to do the anti-capitalist thing. So
Yeah, it's very common in certain cultures. Even in
of
Brazil,
course, of
it is
course,
very
yeah,
common.
yeah, yeah, that's right. And capitalism will come and it will say no more of that. And you need three or four houses or five houses, and you need three or four cars, and then people instead of saying that's capitalism will eventually say that's anti-capitalist
Oh,
because the woman needs a car and a house and whatnot. So
yes, now we need more workers
no,
working
we
on
need more
the
workers. Yeah,
fabrics.
yeah.
Go there, lady, do more babies. It is what is happening with the 4B movement in Korea. Women are rejecting, decentralizing men completely, rejecting men completely. They
Mm,
don't want to work with men. They don't want a relationship with men. They don't want to have babies. So the
mm.
government is trying to incentivize them by literally paying for families.
Yeah.
But usually, what women want is paid leave maternity. That's for sure.
Mm,
The possibility of seeing their children grow up, the possibility of being with their family, and
yeah.
if they cannot survive for themselves, they rather not do it because they're too afraid to surrounded by the men's only income. And what
Right.
I would say, what would be the solution for this, in my humble opinion? And I say humble because honestly, I still need to find more ways to create some sort of balance. I believe women should get an education, and I believe we should definitely volunteer even when we're not working, so we can keep always the curriculum with something there, making connections and giving back to society. This was the way I grew up. Women in my family, even if they didn't work or couldn't work or their husbands wouldn't allow them to work, yes, I come from conservatism.
Mm.
Anyway, they would at least volunteer, and they would at least be in charity events or throwing charity events. I think we should have a stronger community, a real one, not a fake one of people competing who is brighter or whatever. A strong community, not one that you are exiled for saying the wrong thing, wearing the wrong color, and voting for the wrong candidate, whatever this candidate might be. I'm talking about strong ties above of personal beliefs. And aside from education, aside from volunteering, also with the internet nowadays, I honestly don't see an excuse anymore, because there is a myth that women who lived at home taking care of their children, they didn't work. Aside from domestic services being services, aside from that, many of them would work. They would work if it was like a little market, baking cakes, sewing, whatever it is, they would work. But their main purpose was still their families.
Right.
The main goal was to raise their families. So what I humbly propose nowadays, that we have access to the internet, is a balance between working for ourselves, providing some sort of service on the internet, volunteering to keep the community together, studying if we haven't finished our studies, but focusing on our families. This, to me, for me, it's paradise. Of course, not every woman can do that, but those who can, I strongly encourage you to find a way to balance everything from your home. So you still have your independence, financial security, but if you do want to build a family, a home, whatever, you still can do it, because chasing profit, you're only changing the focus on one man who is your husband to another man who is your boss. And if you can't trust your husband, if you can't trust his love, the way he provides for you, the security that he should be giving you, you can't also trust the other man who is the boss, who sees you just as a number. Oh yes, but then I can find another career path if the husband leaves you, whatever. Yes, but again, if you are well educated, if you still have ties with your community by volunteering, and you own your own business part-time, online, you have the best of the worlds. And this is a lot of what some community of women are trying to teach others, especially what we call high-value women. We're trying to teach others to find some sort of balance between family and financial security.
Yeah, so I think what you're saying is ultimately a woman wants to focus on what's integral to her and not making money the be all and end all of her life, as so many people do, male and female, but at the same time should be um, should be in a position to make her own money and even, be making money. And I think that's entirely sensible in this day and age where everything it changes suddenly and it's chaotic and we don't really know what's coming down the tracks towards us, or what may happen to us in our own personal lives as well. I was going to add, I think every study shows that something like 70% of employees do not like their jobs. And now, of course, now that is 70% of women as well. But obviously, if a woman or a man even can focus on what's integral to them and then earn money as well without compromising their values or beliefs, so that they are empowered and can earn more money and take control of their lives should something disastrous happen in the world or in their personal lives. I think that is a good thing. And I think, ultimately, I think what we're both saying is, to the women should empower themselves, not by consuming things, not by running after, uh, a particular position in a career necessarily, or adopting a certain political viewpoint, which is uh, you know what we're supposed to believe today, but it won't be in 5 years, and it wasn't 5 years ago. But instead, to think about more archetypal and integral, what's more integral to her life, which is probably sound advice for everyone, actually. But bringing it back to the enchantress who attracts and is able to give this sort of mystical or spiritual or supernatural wisdom and power to the man, there is a sense where a woman kind of radiates this integral power, right? Which builds up in some women, maybe more than others. But that's ultimately, I think, what we're trying to promote, that,
I,
self-reliance in a relationship as well, hopefully, if that's what someone wants, but focusing on what's integral to them, growing and still having, control over their own environment.
Absolutely. The sacred masculine is a protector in the physical 3D, as we say, world,
Mhm.
and the feminine is a protector in the 5D or the spiritual realm.
Right, for
So
sure.
they're both protectors, but in their own with their own devices. And
Yeah, definitely.
another point I'd like to make is I understand why women choose to decenter men, and I understand why these movements are so popular and even necessary in some cases. However, it is just not possible to decenter men in every aspect of your life for the majority of women, especially those who want a family. And it's natural to want a family. It's not a problem. It should not be a taboo nowadays to want a family. So what I think is women should definitely choose their own path, but you should choose wisely and, as you said, accordingly with the path you want, the goal you want. If the goal is to be rich or whatever is profit, of course, choose your career, but then you're sacrificing perhaps family time. And whereas if you choose family over profit, you might, have a little bit less of money, but the riches of family. And of course, if you're wise enough, some of these women, as I said, nowadays with the internet, nowadays with business being so accessible to anyone. Anyone can learn about finances, anyone can learn about business, anyone can start a business if they have an internet, if they have Wi-Fi and a phone. If you're watching this video, you possibly could start your own business and educate yourself about financial. So what I'm not promoting, and I hope people understand this, is being uneducated, relying 100% on your husband, and not being wise enough for you to, not have your own bank account, etc., etc. No, I believe we should move carefully and not trust anyone 100%. Of course, because life can happen, as you said. So if we do put spirituality first, and if we study femininity from the lens of spirituality and not ideology, we will see there is no problem in being soft. You can be soft and powerful. You can be feminine and powerful. There is power in femininity, and the goddess knows it. I hope you like this video. See you on the next one about masculinity. Bye bye.